Question number 8, Kevin Hague.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance and asks, does he stand by all his statements?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, yes, in the context in which they were made.
Supplementary, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Kevin Hague.
As the Minister is happy to have the problems of success, as he told the Nation television programme on the weekend, could he tell the House if it is a mark of this government's success that the home ownership rate is at its lowest since 1951, and if he is happy about that?
Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I know the Greens don't like any kind of economic success. They regard it as an attack on the environment, but we think it's, on balance, it benefits most people. So yes, in answer to your first question, we are happy to have the problems of success. Secondly, with respect to home ownership rates, the member may be aware of the Home Start program launched on the 1st of April. I hope he's advising his constituents about it, which will assist particularly young New Zealanders into home ownership. But the steady decline in home ownership since the late 1950s, I think, tells us a bit more about demographic change, the change in the nature of households and so on, particularly, say, for instance, the fast growth in the sole parent household, is probably a stronger explanation than some others that the member has in mind.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Kevin Hague.
Is it another mark of this government's success that the median house price in Auckland has now reached $753,500, with an average sale of more than $800,000, and is he happy about that?
Honourable Bill English.
No, Mr Speaker, I'm not happy about it, and I'm particularly unhappy with the kind of planning approach that the Greens advocate, which is part of the cause for the rapid escalation in house prices. The Greens have advocated anti-growth and densification policies for years. They've been far too influential, and that is cutting low and middle income Aucklanders out of the possibility of decent housing or owning their own house. And I hope the Greens would change their views and help us change the Auckland Council's views so that we allow Auckland City to grow and have affordable housing.
Order. Supplementary question, Kevin Hague.
Is it a problem of this government's success that its housing accord partner, the Auckland Council, has put the building of 2,000 to 3,000 supposedly fast-tracked homes on hold around Huapai because the government refuses to properly fund much-needed transport links to this area?
Well, Mr Speaker, I'm sure there will be ongoing discussion with the Auckland City Council, but my understanding is that, quite independent of the government, they appear at least to have reduced their own infrastructure budget at a time when the city is under pressure to grow. That's a wee bit hard to understand, and I'm sure we can have further productive discussions with the city, but they should be clear, as the Greens should be clear, that the answer, the long-term answer to affordable housing in Auckland is more houses on the ground faster, and the government will relentlessly focus on that objective.
Supplementary question, Kevin Hague.
Is it a problem of success for this government that the Auckland Council is actually caught between a rock and a hard place when it comes to housing, with Auckland ratepayers being the rock and working with this government being the extremely hard place?
Well, Mr Speaker, the Auckland Council would not have to work with the government if it built enough houses fast enough for the people who want to go to Auckland and pay rates. But they're also caught with dealing with community groups fostered and encouraged by the Greens to oppose new building of houses in Auckland communities when we need them.
Order. Order. Supplementary question. Order. Order. Supplementary question, Kevin Hague.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Does it make the Minister happy that he and his government willfully ignore the advice of organisations such as the OECD and the Reserve Bank and rule out introducing capital gains tax to curb property speculation, which is driving up house prices in Auckland?
Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the member may be aware New Zealand already has tax law that taxes gains from speculation as if it's income at the marginal income tax rate. So, no, I'm not unhappy to be considering OECD Reserve Bank advice and not necessarily taking it, because what we've discovered in this whole process is that planning law, such as that advocated by the Greens, that tries to restrict the growth of Auckland, creates inequality for low and middle income households who can't afford housing, and it creates very high and volatile house prices. And we will continue to work hard to undo the damage of the previous 20 years when that philosophy was put in place.
Supplementary. Order. Order. I'm just waiting for Mr Twyford. Supplementary question, Kevin Hague.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Isn't it insulting to tell young Aucklanders who are desperately trying to buy a house and are being outbid at auctions week after week by property speculators that this government's policies, which do absolutely nothing to address demand side of the housing market, that they're a success?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, what would be insulting to tell young Aucklanders is the Greens saying to them they should have cheap houses, but the Greens are opposed to roads, to cars, to digging up the ground, to creating subdivisions and to building houses. That's what's insulting to young Aucklanders, is Labor and the Greens saying you should have cheap houses, but you're not allowed to do any of the things that ensure more houses get built faster.
Point. Order. Order.
Mr Speaker, my point of order is that answer does not fulfil the requirements of the standing orders where ministerial answers are concerned. It was all about some other party's so-called stance, totally irrelevant to the question being asked.
Order. No, on this occasion, when I consider the start of the question, isn't it insulting? The Minister, I think, has addressed the question. It would have been helpful if he hadn't used it as an opportunity to attack the Green Party to the extent he did. I accept that point. Further supplementary? Order. Question number 9, the Honourable Annick King.